of the library, but I thought it was so nice. I got it. I thought you'd be interested in it. It's titled The Great Fire of London, and it's an anniversary edition of the Great Fire of 1666. Such a lovely cover in gold. So, let's open up the book and begin. It's quite a new book, so I'm going to gently move the pages across. Now, it is by Emma Adams and James Weston Lewis. And here is the beginning of the old nursery rhyme. London's burning, London's burning, fire, 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 fire. So the contents are: the City of London, a long hot summer, Thomas Farriner's Bakery, Sunday the 2nd of September, Peeps' Diary, Monday the 3rd of September, Tuesday the 4th of September, Wednesday the 5th of September, a city in ruins, changes to firefighting, in memory, people and places. Wow, what a beautiful picture. What a lovely illustration. So, this is the City of London. In 1666, London was not only the capital of England, but one of the biggest cities in the world. It was a bustling place, heaving with people and buildings, and its population was growing rapidly. In 1665, close to 100,000 Londoners, around a fifth of the city's population, died from the Great Plague, a disease that haunted London. However, even with all these deaths, the number of people living in London was still enormous. And in 1666, the city was very different from the one we know today. Buildings were mostly made from wood, straw, and a tar-like substance called pitch, which protected the wood from water damage. However, the pitch also caught fire easily. In the poorest parts of London, the buildings were so close together that neighbours could lean out of their own home and touch the house opposite. And the smell, horse-drawn carts and carriages were pulled along the cobbled streets, and animal mess mixed with the waste from houses. There were few street sweepers and no sewer systems to keep the city clean. London was very noisy, very busy, and very dirty. A long, hot summer. London experienced an especially hot summer that year. In fact, very little rain had fallen across the whole of southern England. Buildings dried out, the ground became dusty, and even London's main river, the Thames, was running low from so little rainfall. ashes, but on Saturday the 1st of September 1666, no one made sure that the fire in Farriner's bakery had been properly put out. The oven continued to burn, and no one noticed. Sunday, the 2nd of September. In the early hours of Sunday morning, the Great Fire of London started. Some say it was because a hot ember fell from the oven and set fire to a nearby pile of wood. Others say that Farriner had forgotten to sweep out the oven, which meant that the dying fire sprang back to life. Even Farriner's maid was blamed, although she never had the chance to deny this, because she was one of the first people to be killed by the fire. By 3 o'clock in the morning, flames rose high above Pudding Lane and could be seen from a quarter of a mile away. A strong wind helped the fire move quickly, blowing it west from house to house. It fed off the dry wooden frames of buildings and licked at thatched roofs and pitch, pushing southwards towards London Bridge. If the fire travelled across the bridge, everyone and everything south of the river would also be in great danger. Peeps' diary. Samuel Pepys is now famous for the diary he kept between 1660 and 1669. He was a highly regarded Londoner because he worked as an administrator in the Navy and later became a Member of Parliament. Pepys' diary is more than 1 million words long and is packed with detail about his personal life and work. It also contains information on great moments in British history, such as the coronation of King Charles II, the devastation of the Great Plague, and of course, the Great Fire of London. In his diary, Pepys wrote that his maid rushed to tell him about the spreading fire. By and by, Jane comes and tells me that she hears that above 300 houses have been burned down tonight by the fire we saw, and that it is now burning down all Fish Street by London Bridge. The Diary of Samuel Pepys. The only way to stop the fire from spreading was to create a fire break. Houses had to be pulled down to create space between the fire and the buildings still standing. Most people didn't want to tear down their homes, but nothing else would stop the fire. Pepys went to King Charles and asked him to take action. The king was deeply troubled by Pepys' visit and sent him to deliver his message to the Lord Mayor of London. Sir Thomas Bloodworth, the mayor, was sent into a panic, shouting, "Lord, what can I do? I have been pulling down houses, but the fire overtakes us faster than we can do it." The fire continued to spread west towards Thames Street to warehouses filled with oil and alcohol. This deadly combination fed the flames and made the fire even more dangerous. Monday, the 3rd of September. Only a day after the first flames had escaped the oven, the great fire was unstoppable. It raged through the city, destroying some of the buildings on London Bridge. By evening, the flames burned so brightly that night looked like day, and ash fell from the sky like snow. Tuesday, the 4th of September. By Tuesday, the fire was so hot that nobody could get close enough to fight it. The firefighting equipment was no match for the blaze, and when St. Paul's Cathedral caught fire, and Ludgate Hill and part of Fleet Street went up in flames, King Charles II ordered that as many buildings as possible be knocked down. Men, women and children fled their homes, taking as much with them as they could carry, even burying some of their belongings to protect them. Some people escaped on foot, in carts and by boat, while others stayed to fight the fire. At its worst point, the Great Fire of London burned through 100 houses in just 1 hour, but thankfully the strong winds were starting to weaken. Wednesday, the 5th of September. On Wednesday, the smell of gunpowder filled the air as houses and shops were blown up. Many important buildings, including St. Paul's Cathedral, the Royal Exchange and Guildhall, couldn't be saved from the fire. The king took charge of the firefighting and organised groups of people to demolish buildings. Lines of men snaked from the River Thames to riverside houses and shops that were still on fire, passing buckets of water between them. It was a slow process, but the biggest flames began to die down. More than 3 days after it had started, the great fire was finally under control. Lord, what sad sight it was by moonlight to see the whole city almost on fire. That's from the diary of Samuel Peeps. A city in ruins. Once all of the flames were put out, East London was unrecognisable. Around 400 streets had been burned to the ground. 87 churches lay in ruins, and more than 13,000 houses were reduced to ashes. Amazingly, it was reported that fewer than 10 people had died in the fire. Most had escaped to the fields north of the city. It was in those fields, in Moorfields, Highgate and Islington, that the rich and poor set up tents and huts beside each other. Peeps was surprised to see that some wealthy people had chosen to save their musical instruments from the fire. South of the River Thames was safe. London could be rebuilt. King Charles II wanted to create a grand new city that would be the envy of Europe, with wide streets, beautiful parks and no overcrowding. But there just wasn't enough money for the king's dream to be realised. Tradesmen needed to reopen their businesses quickly, and families needed their homes to be rebuilt cheaply. In 1668, 2 years after the Great Fire, new rules were put in place, meaning that buildings had to stand further apart basic. People used leather buckets and hand squirts filled with water, but it was hard to get hold of the equipment because there wasn't enough to go around. After the Great Fire, new and improved techniques were put in place. London was divided into 4 areas, each with its own firefighting service and equipment. Hand-pulled fire engines were rare, but were introduced slowly, and by the 18th century, horse-drawn fire engines could be seen on London streets. By 1832, there were 15 separate fire brigades in London, and because firefighting was still difficult to organise, they joined together to create what would eventually become known as the London Fire Brigade. The fire brigade had 77 firefighters, 14 fire engines, and 13 fire stations. In memory, between 1671 and 1677, a memorial to the Great Fire was built, designed by Christopher Wren and Robert Hooke. It is 61.5 metres tall and at the junction of Monument Street and Fish Street Hill. It stands exactly 61.5 metres away from where the fire began on Pudding Lane. It is called the Monument. People. King Charles II, 29th of May 1630 to the 6th of February 1685, son of King Charles I. Charles II became King of England, Scotland and Ireland in 1649, but spent 11 years in exile and only returned to Britain in 1660. His coronation took place on the 23rd of April 1661 at Westminster Abbey. Sir Thomas Bloodworth, baptised 13th of February 1620 to the 12th of May 1682, merchant and politician. Sir Thomas Bloodworth was the Lord Mayor of London from October 1665 to October 1666. At first, he thought the Great Fire of London was no real threat, and so was reluctant to knock down buildings. Many people thought this was the reason the fire caused so much damage. In Peeps' diary, he calls Bloodworth a silly man. Samuel Peeps, 23rd of February 1633 to the 26th of May 1703, naval administrator and member of Parliament. Samuel Peeps was a respected man at the time of the Great Fire. Through hard work, public support, and his natural talent for administration, he rose through the ranks in the Navy and became Chief Secretary to the Admiralty. His diary gives a first-hand account of many important events in British history, including the Great Plague and the Great Fire. Places: St. Paul's Cathedral. When the old St. Paul's Cathedral was burnt to the ground during the Great Fire of London, the architect Christopher Wren designed a new cathedral to stand in its place. was lined with around 200 buildings and was actually built in a different place, a whole 30 metres east from where it is today. The Old Bailey. The Central Criminal Court is known as the Old Bailey after the street it stands on. It is one of a number of buildings that housed the Crown Court, and it was destroyed in the Great Fire. The Old Bailey was bombed during the Second World War and sustained severe damage. It has been restored, rebuilt and extended many times over the years. Guildhall. The term Guildhall refers to both the building itself and its main room, the Great Hall, which was damaged during the Great Fire. Guildhall has been restored and extended over the years. A new entrance was added in 1788. New roofs were built in 1866 and 1954, and an art gallery was installed in the 1990s. And here is a map showing the extent of the fire. Here is the River Thames. So it reached over half of London Bridge, Customs House, Tower Street, to Fenchurch Street, Cornhill, Throgmorton Street, Coleman Street, Cripple Gate, part of Aldersgate Street, Newgate Street, Shoe Lane, Fleet Street, Salisbury Court. Here is St Paul's, Ludgate Hill and Blackfriars, Carter Lane, Baynard's Castle, Old Fish Street, Cheapside, Wood Street,